I'm recording.
Hello, how you doing today, class? Dr. Hasan. My name is Brianne Cook, and I'm giving a presentation for group communication SC332, and it's going to be over Cyrenaica and the fact that they want self-determination to be their independent body of people. First, I'll start out with the definition of self-determination, which includes the principle of international law that nations have the right to freely choose their sovereignty and international political status with no external exemptions. So basically, that's a lot of big words. Pretty much what that means is the freedom to choose and to make the choices that a regular body of people can make. Here in the United States, we freely advocate on having freedoms and rights. We freely advocate on having rights that can't be taken away from us. And we use those rights each and every day. Even if you don't realize it, you're using these rights in each and everything you do. Here, us being at school, us being in classes, women being allowed to be participating in our society as a whole as some sort of equivalent to a man. So we use these freedoms every day. So for a country such as Cyrenaica, who doesn't have these freedoms, now is the time that they're choosing to fight for it. The pre-background history is for 4 decades, they were governed by a man by the name of Gaddafi. Most of you are probably familiar with him. Gaddafi was an autocratic personnel who basically governed the country all based on his rule. There was no opportunity for anyone to voice their opinions or give any sanctions or any details into what situations occurred with them. The history of Cyrenaica right now they are a country that could have a very, very lucrative future, but as of right now they don't. They have a very, very large, massive supply of oil in that country, which also brings in a lot of revenue and exports a lot of monetary revenue as far as coming with money for trades and bargains, and obviously sales of imports and exports of that oil, which sounds as if it's a good proposition for the country to have lead, but right now the problem with that is the country, the region Cyrenaica isn't seeing any of the money. So all the benefit that they have from having this oil on their land, they aren't receiving any of it. The region itself is still living in poverty. They're still struggling for people to get fed, people to have Medicare, people to not have diseases. They're still urging for voting rights. They're still urging to even have a government which would include voting versus just one person saying the word of it. Gaddafi began this by making an exchange with Tripoli. And pretty much what that exchange was is if that region gave Cyrenaica protection, then basically that region would be able to have all the money and all the oil that came from the region Cyrenaica. So what that means is they paid Gaddafi a stipend. Therefore, Gaddafi made an arrangement with them that if they would govern their part of the region, that they could have all those values, which means the region Cyrenaica isn't actually receiving any benefit from those oils. The big question is, if the region was allowed to stand on its own body, could it survive? I'm here today to explain to you that yes, indeed it could. It has the adequate number of body of people. It has a government plan which it could use to put an effect to work. What in my mind, whenever I heard the situation and I did my research on it, basically it made me think of slavery. And what it made me think of was that, in the era of our history where African Americans were slaves, and when we were first brought to this country as slaves, we were brought here on the pretenses that if we were our own people, if we stood on our own, we would not be able to survive. But also, no one gave us that opportunity. No one gave us that choice, that decision to make. No one tried to teach us how to survive in the society. They just automatically assumed that we couldn't do it. So that's the reason why Cyrenaica has come to the civil war, which Gaddafi found himself to be murdered in, and he was murdered and assassinated by the rebels of that region. So the problem is the people are urging to say that they do have a voice, they do have rights, they do want to be, they do want to have rights of what goes on in their government. Whenever they go to the area of Tripoli, obviously because you think of it as a region. That's their region who supersedes them. And right now, if they want any papers, documents, Medicare, housing, if they want anything that a body would have to suggest to the government for, they have to venture to Tripoli. If they venture to Tripoli, this isn't some peaceful journey that they just go and they may assess all of these resources. whenever they go, pretty much what occurs is the fact that they go there, they could be killed, they could be murdered. Basically, they're ran back out of their region. So what's happening is Cyrenaica is funding Tripoli, of which whom, if Tripoli didn't have Cyrenaica funding it, Tripoli would fall and crumble, because they have the most people, they have the largest number of people, but they have the least amount of resources possible. They don't have access to any natural resources that would bring that country revenue. So that region of the country only has revenue because of the money that's coming from Cyrenaica. So now Cyrenaica is coming to the point where they're saying, we want to stand up, we want our own voice, and we have the body and able power to do it. As African Americans, whenever we got the opportunity to finally be our own body, we did just fine. We did more than fine. We're successful, we're here, we're a part of this society. We've come to this society as an equivalent factor. Our president is an African American right now as we speak. So what they're asking for is the opportunity to govern themselves, the opportunity to reap the benefits from their money, from their oil, because there's no, what they're saying, what they're proposing is, it doesn't make any sense for the country to be so rich, but yet they're still so poor, because each and every dime that they make is being exported directly to another region of the country. So what Cyrenaica is begging for, what they're pleading for, is the fact that they can't stand on their own. They have the number of body to people to do it. They have a plan to do it with, and they want their voices to count. Right now, under the NTC, which is the National Treasury Council, what that is I'm sorry, excuse me, the National Transitional Council. What that is that's the government that took over Cyrenaica when Gaddafi was killed. So although they're not under the rule of Gaddafi any longer, they're still under this council, which means they're still not their own body, they're still not their own people. So what they're asking for today is they're asking for their freedom, they're asking for their voices to count, they're asking for the place that they live in to reap the lavish of being somewhere where it has these resources, where it has these oils, this money floating in through the country. So basically, they just want their voices to count. And as doing all my research, I feel that if they get this opportunity, that they can stand on their own 2 feet, they can pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and they can be successful. This will conclude my presentation.